So I'm really glad you mentioned COVID because, as we all know, these are very strange times that we live in currently, and everyone's stress level seems to be higher, anxiety seems to be higher, unemployment rates are rising. Families are a little bit disconnected, perhaps. How do you think all of this impacts addiction? Do those things trigger those bad choices that get someone onto a bad path? And what does that mean for people like you and Keystone in terms of the demand for your services?
We would have never thought when COVID first started that we would see a huge influx of overdoses and individuals that were experiencing addiction. And so since COVID happened back in March, we've seen a massive influx of just overdoses happening in the community. And we definitely know this is a contributing factor with isolation. So many people are isolated because of COVID, job loss, relationships have been impacted. And at the end of the day, Keystone is still trying to stay on the forefront and adapt our services to still keep our doors open to help those that have the addiction and need that sobriety and recovery. So we're seeing a lot of adaptations happen in the community with individuals that are going to AA groups, finding a online one to go to instead, or NA groups. And at Keystone, we are figuring out how best to still provide social distance, cleanliness, anything to keep our doors open to help these people that want to get toward their recovery.
So you mentioned overdoses and how those numbers are going way up right now. When you say overdoses, what are we talking about? Are we talking about fentanyl? Are we talking about opiates? Are we talking about heroin that people buy on the street? I mean, it seems like such a vast problem, and there's so many different ways that people get into narcotics or opiates. Is there a trend that y'all are seeing? Is there a particular way that people kind of get into that world? Or I guess I don't even know how to form the question because it just seems so vast. What are you seeing?
When we talk about overdoses, you have to think that there's two different types. There's non-fatal. They get help from the EMS and they're able to live their life and get the help that they need. And then we have the fatal overdoses. Mm-hmm. Generally, what we've seen over the past couple of years since the 90s is a big upward tick of prescription pills being prescribed. And a lot of these are painkillers such as opioids, Oxycontin, Vicodin, hydrocodons. These are what we call painkillers, pain relievers. So these became a huge, prescribing way back in the day from physicians, dentists, even veterinarians. And over time, throughout the past 10 years, we've seen that 75% of people that started using prescription pills developed the addiction.
75%.
Well, 75% that began with the addiction of prescription pills. So just to backtrack, it's not that somebody will become addicted for using painkillers their first time.
Okay.
Once again, it's those factors. It depends on family genetics. It depends on their choices. Are they misusing and abusing their painkillers? Are they taking more than what's prescribed to them? Are they drinking alcohol while they're using their painkillers? And then the environment. Eventually, these 75% of people get cut off at some point from their doctors when they develop that tolerance or dependency through their painkillers. So they have to find somewhere else to get access to that, whether it's a dealer in the community, a parent, or a family's medicine cabinet, getting it from a friend. But eventually sources get cut off, and the next cheap, readily available substance out there is heroin. So that's where we see, 4 out of 5 people that are using prescription pills eventually shift to the heroin. And with the heroin now, since about 2013, we started to see synthetic opioids come into the picture. And what a synthetic opioid is fentanyl. And fentanyl is about 50 to 100 times more potent than morphine. And it's very potent, and it leads to the high chances of overdoses, whether that's fatal or non-fatal. So we're seeing a lot of these synthetic opioids such as fentanyl being mixed into this heroin. And that's where we're at today, where we're seeing a huge number of people overdose fatally and non-fatally. And it's because of these synthetic opioids that are out there.